order to get rid of this organized crime that is called poaching. So, Jim Nyamu, thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps what warrants your trip to the border of Zimbabwe and Zambia?
Thank you so much, and thank you, Kenyans, for giving us opportunity to talk and let you know what's happening. I'm in Vic Falls. This is the border of Zimbabwe and Botswana. And Zambia, sorry, where I arrived yesterday from Francistown, and I'm on a campaign walk, which I left Kenya in July, and I've been walking across these 4 countries. I'm now moving to Malawi, creating awareness and walking and meeting different people. And I've been on the road for the last almost 90 days.
Okay, even as you continue with your walk and the conservation efforts, especially when it comes to poaching and the trade in ivory, the southern part of Africa has been on the spotlight for not so good reasons when it comes to poaching. I mean, we've seen the news emanating from Botswana, where the government was actually put to task to explain why there was an upsurge in the numbers of elephants that were dead. Kindly break this down for us.
Yes, I know there has been news in Botswana about the killing of elephants, which we come out from the Elephant Without Border. And I had meetings with different government officials in Botswana, and also adjacent to Botswana. We're talking of the Hwange National Park, where I spent a lot of time walking and talking to people. Yes, poaching is real in these Southern African countries. Though they have the high number of elephants, like Botswana is the giant, is leading in Africa. Zimbabwe is second with about 82,000 elephants. And what is happening, though their population of elephants are in Apex 2, that means their species are not threatened by trade. But that is not in itself to guarantee them to poach the elephants, because we are talking of the countries are on a corridor. We are talking of the corridor that connect Botswana with Angola, with Zambia, with Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe with Zambia and Malawi. And what is happening in these countries, particularly these 2 countries, Zimbabwe and Botswana, is going to affect the Zambia. And when Zambia is affected, Malawi and Tanzania, Kenya are affected. And we've seen since 2007, when the population of elephants were placed in Apex 2 in these 4 countries, the poaching upsurge actually started being visible. And we've seen some countries like Tanzania losing their population from nearly 140,000 to now, at the moment, they're talking of 42,000 elephants. And from the just added conclusion, or the IWT meeting in the UK, we did not see the real commitment of adding the poaching or hunting in the 2 African countries. Unfortunately, this is going to be a big blow to the Africa if the giant country is not supporting the aid of the trade, because we expect them to lead in the conservation.
Well, even as we expect these countries to lead in conservation efforts, let's just perhaps highlight what the particular governments are doing. There was talk of the Botswana government actually disarming the Department of Wildlife and National Parks anti-poaching unit and perhaps allowing voter hunters a chance to slaughter dozens of elephants. Obviously, the government denied this and said it's only the military that is allowed to carry military weapons. Do you think, in your capacity as a research scientist, that this shows a non-commitment by the government in terms of fighting poaching in that particular country?
I may not be able to speak with audacity over that, because those are policy of a country. But previously, what has happened in Botswana and other countries, I'm sure even in Kenya, where the Kenya Wildlife Service, that's why it's called a service, you have to give them the weapon. You have to give them all the requirements. Actually, weapons, so when I mean the gun, is like a vehicle, because they can't work minus the gun. And from what is coming out clearly in Botswana, the president said that he disarmed the organizations with the armory, with the arms, because he feels that they were not given the proper equipment. That does not mean that they will not be given arms afterwards. There is a serious operation that is going on and the discussions to give them the right equipment. What happened is they say that from the previous government, they gave them the wrong equipment. So they are not really disarming them completely. It's just for the time being, and then they will get the right equipment and they give them. And if you look at what is happening adjacent to the park, Botswana, we remember that Botswana is the only country that is leading with the best practices for community-based conservation model. So there is a collective effort of the government and also for communities in ensuring that elephants are not only at peace, but they are also continue enjoying tourism that comes from wildlife.
Well, that's very true. Let's talk about the market of ivory. Well, we know China is actually getting on board ever since the law against the trade of ivory and its products was actually came to full effect in January 2018. We still know China, according to reports, that it is the world's largest consumer of ivory, both legal and illegal, and it contributes to a yearly slaughter of some 30,000 African elephants by poachers. Do you think the fact that China is coming on board and putting a stop per paper to the trade of legal and illegal ivory, will this contribute to a drastic reduction of poaching in Africa, specifically these two countries we're talking about?
Thank you. The question of poaching and the trade, I think the people who should stop poaching seriously is the talking of where there is the producers. And if you look at the elephant trade information system, that I have categorized the source, the transit, and also the consumer. Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, and part of Malawi and Zambia, we are actually classified as the source of ivory. Poaching is happening here. And then we have countries that are listed as transit countries. We're talking of Malaysia, Philippines, and then we're talking of consumer, where China is leading UK and America. I remember 2 years ago, the Chinese and China came stronger and they are going to close all their carving shop. And it is in record that they have done this. But you look at home, poaching is still happening. Remember our president in 2016, he destroyed 105 tons of ivory. That message was going to the market. But the message to the people who are poaching elephants, nobody have been able to address this entirely, because yes, Chinese and UK and America, they will stop buying ivory. Japan is also trying to, because they work closely with the border countries. But look at us in Africa. We will still continue poaching these elephants, because the poachers in Saburu and Masai Mara and other places, they don't poach these because there is a market in China. They poach this because there is the rumor, they don't even take this ivory to the China. So the question here is, yes, Chinese, they are trying to stop buying ivory and also to stop carving. But what about the African countries? And we've seen from the ivory trade business in Africa countries, them that have a lot of quota, there is very little effort that have been put. I've seen so many institutions here. Like I'm talking of the Kenya Wildlife Service, I'm talking of Uganda Wildlife Authority, ZAWA, Zimbabwe, Zim Wildlife Park. Those institutions are not supported. And it's going to be very difficult for the wildlife organization to work without support. Yes, Chinese will stop buying ivory, but people will continue killing elephants. So Chinese have no answer to Africa. To end poaching, we need African countries. We need African leaders to come strongly and support this institution. I was amazed when I met the Zim Wildlife Authority. The director told me the problem here they have, they don't get money from the government. They don't get exchequer like the way Kenya Wildlife Service expect. They get money. The thing here is they have to collect revenue to run the organization, and they have to sell ivory. They have a question. If the government can be able to support them by giving them money, they will not have a reason to sell ivory. So what we are saying, the African leaders must support the wildlife organization to end poaching and also identify ways for community to benefit from wildlife.
Okay, Jim Nyamu, perhaps as we conclude, you've mentioned that President Uhuru Kenyatta obviously destroyed 105 tons of ivory in Kenya. But let's focus on these other African countries that are sources of ivory to the black market, and specifically those and to the other countries that are in high demand of ivory products. Just explain to us briefly. We've had reports of some African countries trying to lift the ban on ivory in order to get rid of the ivory products that are stashed in their countries. Perhaps as you ascertain these facts, tell us if this is truly a logical way of actually dealing with this pertinent problem.
You know, in my campaign, I walk like 25 kilometers every day, and I'm being flagged off by the different government officers in town. And the message that I've been talking is try and show the countries in Africa where we were. And it is recorded that in 1970s, Africa, we had nearly 3 million elephants. And we are talking today, 2016, when there is the latest data, we are talking we have less than 400,000 elephants. And the thing here is we do not have elephants remaining in Africa. And looking at the trade that we have, and if we are not going to deploy something else apart from what we've been using, we'll lose our elephants. And looking at the African leaders, and I'm talking this because most of the 37 elephant registered countries are countries that are volatile. So, you know, we're talking of countries like Benin, Niger, you know, Ivory Coast and other countries. They don't have a lot of money to support the wildlife organization. And I'll repeat again, if we want to end poaching, we cannot say that whatever that we have, we sell and then we complete business, because it's going to open other appetite for other animals. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, if we want to do this business of hunting, is it sustainable? Because look at what Kenya we have. We are talking of, we have nearly 30,000 elephants. But okay, what is in the record is about 2,000 elephants. Okay, so we need to look for ways of sustaining this tourism business than going to the hunting business.
Well, that's a very good point. Looking for ways to sustain this tourism industry. Jim Nyamu joining us from the border on the side of Zimbabwe and the border of Zambia, specifically at Victoria Falls. He's an elephant research scientist and an activist against poaching and trade in ivory, just as we were trying to shed light on this pertinent issue that is facing the African continent. Even as we talk about matters on the African continent, we cannot fail to mention something that is emanated